Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. You know, before we get started, I wanted to make an announcement because we have a bit of exciting news. We've been doing this program for 6 months, and we have over 1 million viewers that went to YouTube to take a look at this. So I want to congratulate our audience for this, and it really is encouraging to us because we're trying to present some news that you don't hear about on the evening news. So I'm very pleased with that, and I think the growth is going to continue.
Yeah, I'd like to thank 1 million people for watching our program in this past 6 months. I think it is amazing and tremendous, and I feel so privileged to have them. But I would like to also to remind viewers that you can subscribe to the Liberty Report channel very easily, and that way you won't miss a live show, or you can also catch up on the shows as they're posted. Ron Paul Liberty Report. Go to youtube.com/Ron Paul Liberty Report and subscribe. Thanks.
Good. Daniel, the subject for today's report is going to be the hot spot in the world, and everybody acknowledges it's probably the hot spot, and that, of course, is Syria. And there's been hints of escalation over there with the response of Russia, with what we have been doing for so long over there. And it looks like just recently the Russians have started doing some bombing. But now the big argument is, whose side are they on? Who are they bombing? And what is their purpose? And, you know, our position on this has been for 4 years, our explicit position has been, and we've gotten the world to go along with this, is Assad must go. But it looks to me like the Russians are saying Assad must stay. So this is a contest. They are bombing, and there's a lot of hype. You know, there's a lot of lies go into starting wars, and then the propaganda persists. And we've been through this so many times with what has happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, and try to sort this out. One thing I do know as a fact, that none of these countries are better off, and the United States is not better off with us participating in regime change. But what about this story on who's getting bombed? Of course, if we were non-interventionists, it wouldn't be as relevant. But since we're engaged there and we're going to be a participant, it escalates. Who are these people claiming exactly what Russia did, and do we know exactly what Russia did in the last couple of days?
What's interesting is there's this group called the White Helmets, and they are founded and funded by the U.S. government. They're supposed to be NGO do-gooders over in Syria. Well, they kind of slipped because before the Russians even started bombing, they were tweeting out photos of dead Syrian civilians saying the Russians have killed these people and this sort of thing, and they were caught up doing it. So it really is an information warfare. But from what we've seen, and actually I was looking up, this is the Neocon Institute for the Study of War, Kimberly Kagan's group, and she pointed out even that the Russians on the first day hit these towns that were occupied by Jabhat al-Nusra, which is the al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. So at first it seems that Russia is bombing al-Qaeda, which we should be overjoyed about. They're supposedly our enemy, but the Pentagon has not been too thrilled about it.
You know, if they both are saying that the real enemy is ISIS and al-Qaeda and the radicals, it seems like all we've done is make things much worse. So if that were the case, we would be allies with Assad, and we'd be allies with the Russians, because the Russians, I'm sure right now, they're sort of taking the argument, well, we're in there to get rid of ISIS and hit the bad guys. But I think their position could be twofold. I mean, it's obvious they're sympathetic and allies of Assad, and they have a naval base there, so they do want to save Assad. At the same time, saving Assad is preventing al-Qaeda from taking over. You would think that our government would be a little more sympathetic with this, but no, we argue the case that Assad must go. And I think this leads to nothing but confusion. What I am concerned about is now that we have bombs dropping and so many different factions there, that there's going to be an accident or a false flag, and then there's going to be a blame, and there's a lot of weaponry over there. And I don't think we're on the verge of this thing totally exploding into World War III in that sense, but it could continue to escalate, and it's getting to be a hot spot because right now we haven't heard too much from Israel. But the other thing that amazed me on this issue was the Saudi Arabia's position on this. You know, here we are, an ally with Saudi Arabia. We're bombing Yemen for months now, killed several thousand at the best count we have. And Saudi is getting into this great debate that Assad has to go, because he killed civilians. You know, and my bet is that Assad has probably killed less civilians in the last 6 months or a year than Saudi Arabia goes. So that is so hypocritical, and yet this stuff just gets repeated on the news on a daily basis, and they never give you any suggestion that there might be a balance to this.
This is why, you know, the U.S. is so routinely criticized for its hypocrisy. The U.S. has been assisting Saudi Arabia in its attack on Yemen. Over 4,500 people have been killed so far in Yemen, half of them civilians, just in the last 150 days. And the U.S. has said nothing about this, yet this first airstrike, which supposedly a few civilians were killed, even though as we spoke, that's probably propaganda, that all of a sudden the Saudis are now, I don't know if you know this, they're now chairing the UN Human Rights Council.
Oh yeah, that's a
now
good
they're concerned with human rights in Syria as they bomb Yemen into the Stone Ages.
And each side generally want to claim the moral high ground, and they're living within the law. And that's where a lot of hypocrisy comes in. But you know, you have to give Russia a little bit of credit in the fact that they were dealing with a country which was there for a long time. They've had agreements. They've had a naval base there for a long time. I mean, I don't think we're going to give up Guantanamo, you know, with a click of a switch. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what they're asking Russia to do. And strategically, that is pretty important for them. But my guess is that money and economics and oil still is playing a big part on this, and I think Israel always plays a part in it. But you take the routes on these pipelines. Strategically, Syria is very important. They don't have the oil wells, but they're close to oil. And getting oil to Europe is one way that they might squeeze Russia. And I know we have a map of how we're trying to squeeze Russia militarily. And then we have the sanctions. Economically, we have them on there. And I think this is it. I just don't understand the lack of logic on our people to think that if it is economics, why don't you just work it out and deal with it and have a little competition? Why do you have to, you know, go to war over all these things? It just, they have so little confidence that markets could work some of these out. But I think the oil and the pipelines have a lot to do why we're involved, and I think the Russians are involved for strategic reasons. Obviously, I think they're concerned about ISIS as well, not just in Syria, but in that whole region. They know what radical Islam can do.
They've actually had thousands of fighters. Russians in the Caucasus have gone to Syria to fight, and the Russians are worried about when these guys come home with all the skills they've learned and the radicalization they've received. That's one of their concerns. But you know, back when this started, you predicted that it would not go well, this U.S. bombing. We discussed it on the show that the U.S. strategy made no sense. You want to attack ISIS and you want to attack ISIS's enemy, Assad, at the same time. And I think the point we made is that you don't have to love Assad to realize that he's less of a threat to the U.S. than ISIS is. And I was wondering, you know, the Russians in these 2 days, at least from what I've seen, have had more success than the U.S. has had in this past year. And it seems to me as if because they're talking to Assad, they know the situation on the ground better, they're in communication with the troops on the ground, that they're better able to target. And would it have hurt, not that we would have supported, you would have supported this U.S. airstrikes, but would it have hurt the U.S. at the time to say, okay, Assad, we don't like you, we're not supporting you, but we're going ahead and attacking what we view as a threat, let's talk and let's organize this.
Well, the only thing I would modify on what you said is that we haven't had too many successes in this past year. But how many successes have we had since, 2002? You know, whether, I mean, is it a pleasant place to live right now in Afghanistan? Look at what's happening in Iraq. There was no al-Qaeda there, but there surely is now. I mean, in Libya's a chaos. And now the same people come along and they say, what we need is regime change. You know, we messed up all these other places. And it's so disgusting to see certain senators get on the air right now. And this, of course, too, is a danger because we're in the middle of an election and there's so many demagogues going on here, just saying more. And it's as bad as Obama is and as many problems he's had, it hasn't been the fact that he hasn't killed enough people. And that's what they're saying. But it's pretty amazing to me how everybody agrees, no boots on the ground, no boots on the ground. And yet the boots end up on the ground, you know, in these various countries. I mean, we have them there. So it's a powder keg, and I think that we're, going to be there for a while, and things are going to get a lot worse.
What's scary is, to follow up on a point you started with, Syria is really about the size of Oregon, or as you said before the show, probably only a little bit bigger than your old district when
Right.
it was a big one. So this is a small amount of airspace that probably 6, 7, 8 countries are flying jet sorties through. The potential for disaster is so high. I think it's very, very disconcerting.
Well, generally speaking, on problems like this, I sort of look at this in a moral way. Do we have the moral imperative to involve ourselves both militarily and financially? And I don't see it. You say, well, yes, I mean, he was a bad guy and he kills people like Saddam Hussein and the various other ones. But what if we don't have the moral authority to take money from American taxpayers or send troops over there and get killed over this and then make things worse? So there is no moral imperative that we have to go over there and do these things. The evidence is on our side that says it costs a lot of money, the results are always lousy, and that we ought to reassess this. And right now, the people who look at this from a local area, and certainly the Russians have a more justification because it's on their doorstep. What if the Russians or the Chinese were involved in the overthrow of a bad guy in Mexico, and they were on the verge of getting rid of him and installing, an anti-American vicious dictator? What would we say about that? We would say that we have a moral responsibility. This is on our doorstep, but nobody talks about it that way. Nobody sees it in the same light. But once again, some of these people, the dictators that we have supported and then we turned on them, that is one thing. But when it comes to Putin, I don't see Putin as any angel whatsoever. But right now, I am suggesting to our leaders that he might have a little bit of a higher moral high ground on this and being in a strategically better place than we are. And so the advice ought to be to our leaders is back off. It's time to give up on this policy. It's not working and it's going to end badly. And yes, the Soviet Union learned their lesson in Afghanistan and they had to back off. And some people say, well, Russia will get bogged down in Syria. Well, we're the ones who are being bogged down and we have to wake up soon. So this is our argument for non-intervention, mind our own business, take care of our national security, take care of our finances, set an example for the world. Don't try to spread our goodness around the world through force. Try to spread our goodness through setting a standard and setting an example, and hopefully other people will want to emulate us. I think that's the goal we ought to have. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.